Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is the first book in the Bloodsworn saga, and I read this as a buddy read with Kris from Kris Reviews, and this was something I was extremely excited to pick up. I still remember the day that I bought this, as I heard about it through BookTube, and I never read anything by John Gwynne. I've got Malice and a few of the other books in that series on my Kindle, but I suppose it's the cover and obviously the big ass dragon on the cover that got my attention. So after the first buddy read that me and Kris did with Mark Lawrence's The Prince of Thorns, we didn't really find that book to our taste, and we didn't think it was that great, in our personal opinion. So I asked her, look, would you like to read this book? And she said yes, and I was thinking, this book better be freaking awesome, because if not, there's going to be like a running trend with our buddy reads. But have no fear, all the hype you have heard about this book, every single bit of information that you've heard about this book, every positive comment, every syllable, every word, everything that you've heard about this book, all the hype is 100% true. This was amazing. This is probably going to be in my top 5 of my favourite books I've read this year. Probably on the top of that list. Maybe not number 1, but definitely close. So for those of you who aren't familiar about what genre this is fantasy. More specifically, it is grimdark fantasy, with, I suppose, a sprinkling of epic fantasy. So before I tell you what this book is all about, let's just go straight over to Kris now, where she'll be discussing about what she liked and disliked about this novel.
Hi everyone, I'm Kris. David, thank you so much for having me on your channel to talk about The Shadow of the Gods. I was so excited to do this buddy read with you because I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and wow, it was a doozy. When I'm reading fantasy, there's like 2 things that I really look for, and that is strong building and deep and complex characters, and this book has both. It has both. The world building in this world is phenomenal. This is such a cool world. It's so unique. It's based on Norse mythology, which I don't know a lot about other than like Thor and Odin. But it's so cool, very brutal too. This is a very brutal world, but it's a world that our characters have found a way to live in. This book follows 3 characters, and 2 out of those 3 main characters are actually women, which as a fellow woman, like, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the way that the female characters are handled in this story, because they are, for all intents and purposes, they are equal to the men. They are fighters, they are warriors, and they do not back down. They hit back just as hard as the men do, and that is so cool to see. Now, out of the 2 female characters, I did have a favorite, Orca, because not only is she a kick-ass warrior, she's also a mother as well, which again, I think is so cool. I could talk all day long about how cool this book is. There is one minor thing that I will mention, and that is there are a lot of side characters. So again, 2 out of the 3 characters are in these like big war band type groups, so there is a ton of side characters, a ton of interpersonal relationships, and that did get confusing at times, especially because I'm a crazy person who reads multiple books at once. That was a little hard for me, but other than that, really loved this book. So now I will turn it back over to David to talk more about it.
Thank you, Kris, and if you want to watch her video on The Shadow of the Gods, I will have it linked down below, and please subscribe to her channel. Kris is amazing and I really enjoy her videos, and she's just a really nice person. And plus, this was a really enjoyable buddy read to do with Kris. So this book has a map at the beginning, which is always nice. It has an extra section at the back, as well as a glossary. I didn't know it had a glossary. It was only when Kris brought it to my attention that there was a glossary at the back. I didn't know about that. And it does have a acknowledgement section as well. And I'm not sure whether this is in all the versions of this book, but it has an extra section at the back. And this covers things like about the author and a interview as well. So as always, this is going to be a spoiler-free video, and this is going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding this novel. And plus, because this is a fantasy book, apologies if I mispronounce certain names or countries or terms or whatever. So this is set in obviously a fictional world of Vigrid. Hopefully I've said that right. And this is a very unforgiving, harsh, cruel world that we are in. That these characters are in, rather. And many years ago, there were these massive creatures, these massive beasts that were considered the gods of this world. There were like the dragon, obviously. There was a wolf. There was a bear. There is an eagle. And there's a rat. And numerous other things. I'm pretty sure I heard a fox was in this as well. And they were all the gods. There were massive towering beasts that were roaming this land. And the father of all these gods was a snake. Now this snake was much bigger than all the other beasts or gods. And to give you a sense of scale about how big this snake is, let me just show you the map. So this is the whole of the world, or the country that we're in this book. And you see this? That is the remains or bones of the snake god. So it pretty much is the same length, or width rather, of this world. So it's massive, or was massive. These gods, I'm not sure what powers they had, rather than being intimidatingly big and strong. They had supernatural powers and abilities, but when it comes to what powers they have, it's not really set in black and white. And there were humans back then as well that were worshipping these gods. And there were specific individuals that worshipped specific gods. So you had people that worshipped the dragon god, the bear god, the wolf god, and so on and so forth. And then one day, the gods all got into a massive battle with each other, and they all killed each other. And then all that remained was their rotting corpses that eventually turned into bones. This isn't really much of a spoiler, as it's mentioned at the start of the book. It was described after the gods had these battles with each other that it changed the world, it shifted the world, and when the gods killed each other, the human inhabitants of this world made a vow to each other that they would never let these gods return, and they would do everything in their power to stop that from happening. And throughout this book, there are individuals and groups of individuals that despise the gods. And there are characters in this which are called tainted. Now, the tainted are human beings that have got the blood of the gods flowing through their veins. Now, it's not 100% clear about how this has come to be, or whether there is experiments that are somehow getting the DNA of these gods injected into their bodies. But regardless, these individuals have the power of that specific god, and they have the power to be strong and fast and have all these supernatural abilities. And tainted are extremely disliked as well because they have that connection with the gods. People find them to be lesser than they already are. And plus, the concept of slaves in this book is a massive part of this story, in this world. There are people in this that are called thralls. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, or pronounced. And these individuals have got these metal collars around their necks. And they have got chains, and some of them are treated like dogs. They are on all fours, and their masters are holding onto their chains. and they're sniffing around like dogs. And you have some slaves that are more than that. You have warrior slaves, you have slaves that are probably sold as, you know, as sex slaves and all that type of stuff, but thralls and tainted are looked down upon. Now this book is split up into 3 viewpoints. 3 groups or 3 individuals are our main 3 characters throughout this book. We have Orca, who is arguably my favourite character, one of my favourite characters throughout this book. She is incredibly strong. She is a mother who has a loving husband that is also strong, but he tries to bring out Orca's sensitive side, as Orca is training her son to, you know, be a warrior and be a fighter and being able to defend himself, because she considers the world to be a harsh, cruel place, and the only way you can survive is by holding a sword and defending yourself, and through blood and violence. When I say that she is protective over her son is an understatement. She is fierce. But her husband, whose name escapes me right now, apologies for that, he tries to bring out the sensitive and, you know, gentler side of her. She does have it inside her, like when they're having all these intimate moments and when she lets her guard down and, yeah, becomes more, yeah, soft and gentle. But she is a very, very, very loving mother. And in this world, there is occasions when children are being taken from their families and from their parents for some unknown reason and taken away. And this is throughout the whole book, and me and Kris both decided that this would eventually happen to Orca's son, which it does. And my God, I mean, hell have no fury like a woman scorned. That's all I have to say. I mean, she is prepared to walk straight through the gates of hell and kick the devil right in the, you know, crown jewels. She goes on a murderous rampage. Anybody that gets in her way, no matter who it is, she is more than capable and willing to kill them. And all she wants to do is get her son back. And also to try to find out about why this has happened, but mostly to get her son back. We find another individual called Varg, who is a somewhat freed thrall or slave, and he's on the run, and, you know, he's trying to get away from his old master and his old life. And he is trying to find out about why his sister was murdered. And in order to do this, he tries to find a witch who will give him the ability to see his sister's last moments and ultimately find out what happened to her and who killed her. We don't really know much about Varg's sister. Like, there's not many flashbacks, if at all, which would have been nice. That would have been that nice connection between the reader and Varg's sister. So he joins this elite group of individuals called the Bloodsworn. And the reason why he does this is because there is a witch in the Bloodsworn that, if he becomes one of them, if he passes his training, then he will have the opportunity for her to cast this spell. So that's what his main motivations are. Obviously, as the book goes on, his character develops and he questions whether he should pursue this thing with his sister, or whether he should let it go and become a true member of the Bloodsworn, which is a very, very tight and together band of individuals. And also there's this other female character that's really strong called Elva, who is a part of another group of fighters or band of fighters called the Battle Grim. Now, I prefer the Battle Grim slightly more than the Bloodsworn in my personal opinion. They are fierce warriors, and like the Bloodsworn, they are really tight as a unit. They fight together. Instead of fighting separately, they decide to fight, you know, as one, and, you know, fight in like one massive like blow. They are basically a family, like the Bloodsworn, Elva is a fierce warrior. We find out that she was a princess, but she kind of turned her back on that whole life, and she wanted more from life. She wanted more than just being wed off and being told to do this and do that and stand there and look pretty and, you know, get married to someone that she didn't really love. And she wanted more from life, so she escaped that whole world and became a part of the Battle Grim. And I just want to go back on the cover as well, that when I saw this, I was thinking, okay, it would be funny if this was a really small like lizard and this was a really big man that was just way in the background. So I thought it would be funny if it was like a silly little perspective thing. But no, these gods are really that big. There are loads of fight scenes in this book. There is loads of blood. There is loads of gore. There is loads of fighting amongst human beings. There are loads of fighting scenes with creatures and monsters. People do get killed in this book as well, so don't get attached to anyone. There are loads of twists and turns in this book. Even though when we were reading this, me and Kris were like saying our theories to each other, like, oh, why is this happening? Or why is that person doing this thing? And I more or less guessed how this book was going to end and where it was ultimately going to finish up. This is a really good book, and it had loads of twists that I didn't see coming. So me guessing the end of the book, or more or less how things were going to end up to a certain degree, wasn't really a downside to it. And ultimately, it's just about, I won't say if they find what happens to the kids at the end, or what happens to the gods at the end, but it's a really shocking ending. What happens at the end of the book will blow your freaking mind. This whole book will blow your mind. It's so good. Yes, it's not 100% perfect like in the other book, but I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed this whole world. All the chapters are broken down from the perspective of a specific character. So for example, this one's set on Orca, and then this one is set on Elva. So every single chapter is set or focused around a specific individual. You may be asking whether these characters come together at the end or at some point during this book. Some of them do. They all have their own separate destinations and motivations and goals and quests to actually achieve. And yeah, some of them are heading in the same direction. And yeah, these characters are really strong. Especially the female characters. I actually think that the female characters are just as strong as the males. Now, Kris said this in her clip as well, and I agreed with that. That it's really nice that for a fantasy book, that the females and the males are on the same playing field. There aren't any damsels in distress here. There aren't any of that, like, oh, men are more important than females. The females, to a certain extent, are more vicious and cruel and more capable in the battlefield than the men. And the concept of dying in battle and having like this massive battle and war and being a part of it and having your story told in a tale is something that some of these characters strive and achieve to do. So guys, that's all I really have to say. I could keep on going on and on about this book, but I want to stop it here. I mean, let me know if you have read this book. Let me know if you've heard about it. If you've read it, we can have a discussion about it down below in the comments. But yeah, let me know if you have read this book. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if I've maybe inspired you to pick it up. If you haven't read any fantasy before or any grimdark fantasy, I would start with this one. I really would start with this one, as it's a good solid place to start. And I cannot wait to read The Hunger of the Gods. I know that Kris wants to read that, so cannot wait. I'm so super excited to get into that book. So guys, that's all I had to say. Don't forget to check out Kris's channel and Kris's video. I'll have that all linked down below, so go over there and show her as much love as you possibly can. So with all that out the way, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.